I used to believe a person could outgrow the damage their family carved into them. Until the day a deputy walked up the steps of my parents' house carrying documents with my signature on them. No shouting, no slammed doors, just the quiet thud of reality hitting the porch while they stared at me like I'd become a stranger overnight. I didn't justify anything. I didn't soften anything. I simply let the truth settle between us. Because 7 days earlier, inside a crowded airport terminal, I finally discovered what my family really thought of me. And once you see someone's true face, you can't unsee it. If you're listening, tell me where you're watching from. And if your family ever pushed you past your breaking point, share it below. Sometimes strangers understand us better than the people who raised us. People used to assume I came from a warm, sentimental family, the type that squeezes into booth seats on Sunday mornings laughing over pancakes. I never corrected them. It was easier to let them imagine soft childhood memories than explain that I grew up in a house where control passed for love. My mother adored my older sister, Rowan. She decorated her bedroom like a boutique, bought her the prettiest dresses, and printed photos of her smile until the walls looked like a museum dedicated to perfection. Me? I got used shoes, borrowed sweaters, and a chairless corner during holidays because guests need space more than you. My father wasn't the one who lit the match, but he always held his hands close to the flame. He never defended me, only smirked, shrugged, or pretended not to hear the comments that bruised the deepest. That was his version of choosing a side. I was kicked out twice before I turned 18, once for attitude. Once because Rowan didn't want to share a bathroom. Winters in Colorado hit differently when you're outside with a trash bag of clothes and nowhere to go. But those nights taught me something. If I wanted safety, I would have to build it myself. So I did. Quietly. I took the jobs nobody wanted, studied financial analytics at night in a library that smelled like dust and burnt popcorn, and raised my son in a small lakefront condo that wasn't fancy but felt like sanctuary. He's the only person who never made me feel like I'd take up too much oxygen. My parents never saw any of it because they never asked. They treated me like the family's spare tire long after I rebuilt my entire life. Rowan stayed the cherished daughter, the one with the curated life and glossy smiling photos. So when I booked a short trip for myself, a small escape I'd finally earned, I didn't tell anyone. Not my mother, not my father, not Rowan. Silence was my only protection. But secrets don't last long in my family, especially ones that hint at independence. The morning of my trip was unusually quiet. I kissed my son goodbye, promised I'd bring him back something silly from the gift shop, then headed out with the lightness of someone pretending the universe finally decided to be kind. Denver International buzzed with rolling suitcases and half-awake travelers. I blended right in, hair tied back, plain coat, jeans. Nothing about me looked remarkable. Nothing about me warned that everything was about to break open. The check-in counter. The agent scanned my ticket. Paused, scanned again. Her expression shifted. Not confusion. Pity. "Let me check something," she murmured. My stomach tightened. A few keystrokes later, she turned her screen. "Your flight was cancelled. A refund was processed this morning." My pulse thudded in my ears. I didn't cancel anything. She read the card numbers the refund was sent to. I didn't even need her to finish. I recognized the last 4 digits instantly. My mother's card. I stepped away from the counter, numb. The terminal suddenly felt too bright, too loud. My phone buzzed before I could even breathe. From Mom. "Have fun walking home." Embarrassment. Another message followed before the first one even faded. "Maybe a bus will finally teach you humility." I stared until the letters blurred. It wasn't about the ticket. It wasn't about the insults. It was the realization that they didn't just belittle me. They enjoyed it. I walked outside into the icy air, fingers shaking as I opened a rideshare app. Before I could request anything, a small white sedan pulled up. "You all right?" the driver asked. "You look like someone dropped an entire building on your day." I let out something between a laugh and a gasp. "Close. A text." He nodded with the quiet understanding of someone who'd lived long enough to recognize emotional wreckage. "Get in," he said softly. "I'm off shift. But you shouldn't be out here alone." I didn't argue. The car smelled like pine and old coffee. He told me his name, Calder, a lifelong Denver local. And then he simply listened as I told him everything. The canceled ticket, the messages, the years of being treated like a nuisance. When we parked at a small overlook near a frozen pond, he rested his hands on the steering wheel. "People like that confuse cruelty with care," he said gently. "Doesn't make it true." I stared at the pale winter trees reflecting off the windshield. Then slowly I opened a folder on my phone. A folder I'd hidden for years. Documents, payments, investment notes, the deed to a house my parents had been living in for almost 2 years. A house I owned. The anger didn't consume me this time. It honed me. When Calder dropped me at my building, I wasn't trembling anymore. My condo lobby felt warmer, quieter, steadier than it ever had. I hung my coat, opened my laptop, and let the folder labeled property records fill the screen. Every payment, every signature, every overdue notice, they were all there. They'd ignored every lease term, every grace period. They thought I lived simply because I was struggling. They never imagined I kept my life quiet to protect it from them. But protecting myself wasn't enough anymore. I needed to protect my son from their generational cruelty. Then I opened another file, audio clips. The last time I'd visited their house, I'd accidentally left a recording device running in my bag. I hadn't meant to record anything, but when I pressed play, their voices filled my kitchen. She thinks she's better than us. Cancel her ticket. She can walk home. Maybe she'll learn something. Laughter. Their laughter wasn't the part that hurt most. It was how casual it was. How effortless. By noon, I had drafted 3 eviction notices, one for each adult living there. All legal. All airtight. As the sun dipped behind the lake, I sealed the documents in a plain envelope. My hands didn't shake. I whispered into the quiet room. I'm not going back as their daughter. I'm going back as their landlord. 3 days later, I walked up their forgotten lawn. Noticing the uncut grass, the broken porch light, Rowan's crookedly parked SUV. I didn't knock. I walked inside. My mother glanced up with irritation. What are you doing here? My father didn't look at me. Heard your trip didn't work out. Should have saved more. Rowan smirked. Still crying at the airport? Their laughter floated through the room. Not this time. I placed the envelope on the counter. These are for you. My mother scoffed. Eviction? You think this scares us? I set down the documents, one beside each of them. My father snatched his. You don't own this house. I pulled out the deed. You signed with Calandra Trust, I said. That's me. My mother's voice cracked. You're evicting your own family? You already did, I said quietly. Twice, before I even became an adult. Rowan's voice sharpened. You don't have the money to own anything. I didn't raise my voice. The statements say otherwise. My father tried again. You have no grounds. So I pressed play on my phone. Their voices filled the kitchen. Cancel it. Teach her a lesson. She can walk. More laughter. Silence swallowed the room. I let it sit. For 2 years, I said softly, I gave you a home. And you treated me like an inconvenience you could punish. My mother leaned on the counter. We didn't mean to hurt. You did, I said. You just didn't expect consequences. I slid the final notice toward them. The sheriff already has this. You have 3 days. When I turned to leave, my mother whispered. What happened to you? I paused on the threshold. I stopped begging for a place at a table I paid for. 3 days passed. On Thursday morning, a sheriff's car pulled up. Rowan had already fled the night before, dragging suitcases down the driveway while arguing with her husband about the money she'd misplaced. My parents stood on the porch clutching half-packed boxes, their faces tight with disbelief. The deputy guided them gently through the process. No screaming. No spectacle. Just the quiet collapse of a family built on control. My mother reached for my arm. We're still your parents.